advice is to avoid contact and avoid exposure. Whatever you can do to do it. So, any level of mask is good, but if you're wearing an N95, you're probably better off. That may be more than you need. But the reality is that what we've told people is you should avoid contact, you should avoid exposure. Go inside your house, don't be outside. If you can get away from the water, get away from the water. But that's about what you'd say in terms of preventing exposure. That's all that we're talking about there. In terms of treatment of these conditions, it depends on what condition you have, but it's going to be a standard treatment for a rash or whatever the gastrointestinal problem is. Eye irritation will be drops. There's not any specific treatments that are designed around this exposure. They're general treatments for those kinds of conditions. But right now, the only thing we have to offer is stay away from it and try and avoid exposure.
Yeah, I think in our area, Merit is that the health department is responsible for posting signs and doing that. I don't think the hospital would do that necessarily, but those treatments and conditions like you just mentioned are pretty valid. Maybe one more and then back to Doug, and then we'll wrap it up, and I'm sure. So, go ahead.
Okay. So
Yep.
this sort of piggybacks on what Mary just said, but you sort of cited the fact that the recognition of toxic algae impact on human health, called sort of an emerging health threat, is relatively new recognition of this. Has the medical community been able to keep up with this? Are there standard treatment protocols that, throughout the medical community, people are aware of? Is this the kind of thing that takes hospitals or health systems by surprise, specifically the way that it did here, and that the algae shows up and all of a sudden you start seeing people with these symptoms? Is this the type of thing that doctors in communities maybe where algae blooms have not yet occurred would know to look for without being surprised? Is there communication within sort of like the medical community that this is an emerging health threat and we need to be prepared to deal with it?
I think there is, it's a great question. There is communication, but how, as is true with any sort of educational effort, there's two aspects to that. Somebody has to offer the education, and the person on the other end has to want to receive it. And I think physicians are like all of anybody else. There's varying degrees of commitment to staying current. I think that's one thing for us all to think about with our doctors. Does my doctor stay current? So we have a lot of, like our emergency room physicians, certainly where I'm sure emergency room physicians all over the state are aware. But if a gastroenterologist, I would hope would be aware because they would confront it, or an allergist, or any number of other specialists, that it will vary from physician to physician. And it's familiar with pull, push systems and pull systems. Education in healthcare is almost always a pull system. The physician who wants to learn has to pull that information from somewhere. And if they don't reach out, they don't pull it, they don't learn it. And so there's a wide band there in terms of that commitment. And again, you touch on several specialties. So an emergency room physician would deal with all of them. But then once it had a lasting impact from somebody who develops a GI problem, doesn't go away within a couple of days, they go see a gastroenterologist. You know that gastroenterologist is familiar with what they're doing.
I want to thank you, Rob, for coming, and would you be available for anybody who has, wants to ask you follow-up questions or anything? Thank you for being available, and thank you for coming today. Douglas?
Yeah, I think one more comment. Your group has always been very good to me, back in live in person. One of the comments I wanted to make when Mr. Lord was here 3 years ago, his first comment when he got to the podium, he said, I respect the Colonel and all the service they provided, et cetera, but what he brought to the table then, and he brings it together now, we all know the Army Corps, and we all respect them. They've been a player in this meeting room, but we have always been thinking that they protect humans, and that dike was South Florida. Well, now the cause in terms of the health issue, as well as saving South Florida, is the same way. And I think we should promote that as best we can, because that's the thing that is going to save lives.
Mark, if I can just make one observation, and I apologize, but the more we can make this issue about human health, better off we are. That was a game changer in the discussion. I'd like to think we participated in that, making it, okay, we're not talking about the dolphins and the manatees, now we're talking about human beings being hurt. And that just, the conversation in Tallahassee at that time seemed to me to just spin on itself and make a complete change. Nobody wanted to be in favor of hurt people.
Well, they do start out all their meetings with, the Corps of Engineers does, about the statement about public health and safety and that they're supposed to be attentive to that, but it mostly is directed to, as you said, flood control, protection, and health and safety related to that. But now that expanded role should include these other water quality issues. Give examples from last comment.
Just a quick comment, because so much of what you discussed, Rob, and what we're talking about relates to the public health department or Department of Health. I wanted to let the group know that we did invite the Department of Health of Orange County to join us today, and they did not accept the invitation. Got the sense that the local health department really wanted to be here, but they couldn't get approval from Tallahassee, so there's a disconnect. Gil and I spent all day yesterday at the Blue Green Algae Task Force meeting in West Palm Beach, where they talked about all the issues we're discussing today and the role of the Department of Health, and yet we can't get the Department of Health here to answer these important questions.
Right. That was good. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we did. And I don't think, like Eve said, it was the local health department who does post these signs in our waterways. It's more like their, Florida Health, Department of Health that is the issue. Even though they participate in all the court calls that we've been on, they're not showing up. I don't even know if they were at the Blue Green Algae Task Force yesterday. But they should be.
They have to get permission, as I understand it, and Caroline and that team and the health department have done an incredible job, very limited resources, dealing with the COVID pandemic and other things. I have the utmost respect for them, but they don't have a free hand. I have a freer hand.
Thank you for doing that.
Just one last
Okay,
thing.
one last thing.
The worst news I heard all day was that Rob Lord is leaving at the end of the year. We have absolutely almost like head in the sand mentality in our business community when it comes to trying to fix this. Rob, you've been on the forefront of this. I'm really, unfortunately, I'm not too optimistic that the next president is going to be as forthright and you know, on the side of the people's health like you have been. And so, again, I just wanted to thank you for.
It's been an honor, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm still gonna be around town. And
He got you all those flight
my podium may be a little shorter, but I'll still get on the soapbox.
All right, on our agenda, we're gonna kind of move into the government agency reports, start with Martin County, but before we do, we wanna kind of, just a second, Diane, is bring up, LoSiP process. There are a lot of meetings that have been going on and happening. I know the LoSiP PDT meeting on the 17th, last week, produced a lot of those 5 different kind of array alternatives that they're looking at. They went from that Perdido analysis with several iterations. You've heard thousands of model runs. And now they've come down to frameworks that look like this with Plan CC or AA, BB, CC, BD, and EE. So they're calling them by those double letter acronyms. And there have been suggestions in organizations like ours and others who have moved in directions. As you know, we've had sign-on letters and everything to the Colonel, to the Corps to comment on these plans specifically, and looking at that Plan CC network as being the closest, but it needs to be an improved plan that will eliminate the discharges to the St. Lucie estuary, eliminate the harmful discharges to the Caloosahatchee and Lake Worth Lagoon, and send more water south. Primarily, that's our kind of focus, at least in our organization and others. So I want to recognize our city commissioner, Mayor Matheson, is here today with us, and other, I don't know, other, Mayor Park. We'll start with Martin County, go to City of Stewart. I think I saw Ben here too, so. Okay, homework for people to take. I think there was a letter passed out. Was that in everybody's got that? Okay. So this was in your chair, I believe, right, Blair? We're talking about the letter, and it's also online on the website that we'll be able to connect to. We're asking homeowner associations, all the member organizations to go back to your organization and try to put together some comment letter like this, send it to the Corps of Engineers. We've all kind of done some emailing and sending of letters and similar kind of things to get this process, get participating in this process. Because what's going to happen, and I just mentioned, is that we have the Blue Green Algae Task Force, you heard about yesterday, many of us attended. The district, the Water Management District, that Joshua reported on, is going to have a workshop next Tuesday, the 29th. And then the LoSA process is moving forward with 2 other workshops. One is on the 22nd, which already happened, and then one is on the 6:30 on the 30th, the day after. And then they're moving towards the July 7th date, which is their PDT meeting, the next PDT meeting, project delivery team, where LoSA will wants to hear from each of the agencies on their review and evaluation and their preferred alternatives. So this is really important that we all kind of weigh in on this. So let's start out our reports with Martin County.
Okay, thank you, can you hear me?
Yep, just speak loud.
Okay, since you brought up LoSA right now, I will tell you that John Mayle presented to our Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday. And as we see it, as the county sees it, none of the current alternatives meet the county's goal of 0 discharges. We will continue to work with the Corps through the process to get the best alternative that suits the county this time. If you have any questions, direct them to.
Did they pass the resolution?
No, there was no board action
No board
whatsoever.
action.
They want us to continue to work with people.
We need to sign it.
Oh, I'm sorry, who's on it?
Regarding water quality, well, as you know, Lake Okeechobee is at 12.59 feet. We are getting 0 discharges. Lushatchee is getting about 1,000. Regarding the blue-green algae, at the S308 structure out at Port Mayaca, that is blue-green algae on both the upstream and the downstream side. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a notification that blue-green algae was as far down as Timer Powers Park, which was posted. That's halfway down C44 now, just another 12 miles to get to the S80. Currently, there are no visible things of blue-green algae at the S80 structure, and I believe it's being checked very regularly. Regarding salinity levels, they look pretty good within the estuary, except around maybe the south fork closer to the S80 structure. But I live in the C44 basin, and we've been getting a lot of rain, so I'm sure there's more to run up there. Turbidity looks well within the estuary in the Indian River Lagoon, and dissolved oxygen levels look good as well, except on that same south fork near the sand and near the S80 structure. I do want to let you know about something that the county is working on this summer. You know, there's supposed to be no fertilizer application during the summer per our ordinance. We are doing a retail store fertilizer campaign this year. Our ordinance does require fertilizer stores to have a sign in their stores about our ordinance. We did it a couple of years ago, the signs were pretty small, they were just rip-off tear-offs. We're doing a different type of deal. We've already gone and talked to the stores, we sent them a letter saying that we're gonna be delivering signs to you. I know you probably can't see this, I'm gonna pass some of these around, but the sign is probably gonna be about the size of this front podium. This way, so you can see them, and it even tells you how to read the fertilizer bag, so you can just kind of pass these around. I only brought 10 copies, but just share them, I don't need one back, thank you.
So this will be in the retail?
Yes, we've already mailed them a letter letting them know we're coming back. We should have the large printed ones hopefully by the end of this week or next week, and then we'll be distributing them to the retail stores. So that's our big campaign that we're doing for our fertilizer ordinance this year. And I know a lot of people have been talking to me about, oh, we need to let the public know that the fertilizer ordinance is rainy season, no fertilizer.
Do you have anything regarding the non-maintenance companies and things like that? That do a lot of fertilizer? Like I had someone come door to door, knock on my door, notice my unfertilized yard, and all, but don't keep this cost of fertilizer on it.
We haven't.
Their answer was that it's all
more than Mark County, if I'm in Mark County.
And we're gonna be updating our Blue for Lydian Now, brochures that will go out, and be in the retail stores there as well.
Is there any chance we can drop off a little bigger sign in Lewiston? Good sugar?
Thank you. Ben, you got a little,
I'm gonna hopefully get.
Hold on.
okay.
Oh, the mic after this. I might be able
Try the
to.
mic.
You wanna talk from there?
Here.
Let me see, I might have,
Here.
it's around here.
Testing. Here you go.
Okay, I'll use that.
Told me you had a 128 slide program. I said,
Oops.
yeah.
Everybody knows me, yeah.
All
that's-
right.
There you go.
Okay, so this, I'm not even going to show every slide, just a handful. They're just graphs, all pictures.
He was serious.
All,
Oh, that's my card.
okay, I'll just go.
Ben is a member of the PDT.
Let me do this.
So this is, this is part of what we're going to be showing, just some graphs I've been putting together. These aren't super scientific, I mean, they won't bore you too much. And we had Dr. Paul Julian actually put some, and Zach from the South Florida Water Management District at the last workshop put some remarkable slides together. Fortunately, the data gets a little bit complicated, so what I try to do is just break it out for us, from our perspective, what we're looking at. So the first one I want to show you is this is kind of a score evaluation, how the Army Corps looks at different plans. What I just did, very simply, is broke it down in a simple dot plot, and what you have here is where you want to be. Whatever plan it is, you want to be up here. And you have a big blue zone that's kind of what I would call a semi-pass fail location among all the plans, and then here's kind of the golden zone where you really want to be. There's only one plan that's even close or touching that golden area, and that's Plan CC, which is the one you see us supporting. What is this? Well, on the y-axis, you have water supply performance metrics, and on the x-axis, you have all the, like Lake Okeechobee, the northern estuaries, and South Florida ecology metrics. They're not all, what those metrics aren't stated here. This is just something that came directly from Army Corps data. I just want to illustrate, here you have Plan CC is performing one of the best for both water supply and the best for all of the estuaries. So that's why we're very supportive of this plan. It's the only one in this kind of golden area. So that's my first slide, and one that I like to talk about. This is the one that I think everybody here is going to care about the most. This is the reduction of discharges. What you see over here in the gray in the far right is basically what the existing condition has been. The projected future amount in red is what the Army Corps thinks with all the recent projects it would go down to. So to us, that doesn't seem all that wonderful, right? And a lot of the plans don't have a remarkable change, but as soon as you get to CC, you're talking about this is a third, less than a third of the amount of acre feet that we would get. That's what this is all in. This isn't thousands of acre feet. This is about a third of what you would get. And then Plan AA does, in this case, reduce the acre feet a little bit more, but it also then does a little bit of harm on some other sides. So between AA and CC, the best balanced plan, in our opinion, is CC. Not to say this is zero discharges, not to say this is the goal that we want, but out of all the plans that the Army Corps has come up with, this is the one that's even remotely close to, other than AA, to where we're going. And then I thought that this slide would also, the next two slides are going to be equally important. LACO releases to the St. Lucie during high algal bloom risk months. This is something that I'm talking about between May and August. There's only 2 plans on here that are anywhere close to zero, which is, again, what our goal is. BDB is the plan that you've heard about that was written and drafted by water supply supporters. And then these other plans kind of came in. The EE plans kind of came in at the end, and they do nothing for us. They help the Caloosahatchee a little bit, but they pretty much just put the full burden once again on the St. Lucie. So this is why we're so supportive of Plan CC. You saw in the first slide that it was super balanced compared to some of the other plans. It was the only one in that, what I call a Goldilocks region, And here we are, it's showing that even in high risk months for algal blooms, it's mitigating that problem as well. So it's helping us on a lot of fronts. And then the last thing to look at, I've got other slides, but this is just the last one I want to point out for today. It's South Florida ecology, right? The primary purpose of SERP and everything else for all these years has been getting more water where it needs to go, which is south. Not on us, but south. And I thought putting it in this line graph would be really helpful, because that red line at the bottom, that has been history. That's what we've experienced. It doesn't even come close to the middle of the pack of these new plans. So there's going to be performance increase here because there's only up to code. So that's not what we're concerned about as far as improvement. We know there's going to be improvement. We just want it to be the best improvement. And when you look at between AA and CC, these two plans at the top here, just like a lot of the other plans, they kind of weaken a little bit during the middle of the year, between March and May, between the late dry season. They wane off because obviously we're becoming a little bit more reserved with the recession rates and stuff at the late. But the point is, look at where they're starting. They're proactive plans. In the early dry season in November, they're already saying we need to send this water south. They're not worried or concerned about how much water is going to be in the lake come May. They're saying that water needs to go there now, no matter what. So that's just the takeaway I want you to get from that slide and from the others. And then the only other announcement for the city, this was just more informative of where we're at with LOSM. And then for the city, like with all the signs up here, we're talking about the manatees. And we just passed a resolution, thanks to our commission, requesting staff to bring this forward. We just passed a resolution that's been sent to the Department of Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, requesting that the manatee be brought back to an endangered status from threatened. So that's something that the commission does. And if anyone has any questions, this slide is just a work in progress. I wanted to show you. Once I complete it, I'll be happy to distribute that plus the manatee resolution.
And you'll give it, you put it on the website, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Ben, when you show the 308 releases and stuff, that was.
This slide, yeah.
People need to understand that's 308, that's at the lake.
Right.
That's not S80, that's into the estuary.
Right.
Okay,
This isn't a perfect plan, right?
So we're still calling for no releases out of S80
Yeah.
from the lake. Go ahead.
Is the city proposing an enhanced CC? Is the city going to support that?
Yeah, I mean, there are parts of Plan AA that we prefer. And AA, as you saw, actually brings more water south sooner. So that's one of the performance benefits. It's also, I believe, a little bit better for the lake in some regard. But at the end of the day, the reason why we were supportive of CC is because the West Coast was as well. It was so good, and I didn't go into those details, but for the Caloosahatchee, CC was one of the best performers. So it was kind of like a middle ground for our two.
Are you excluding Lake Worth?
The Lake Worth, I would say that performance is just as good as what we're looking for there. And it was the same thing. I didn't talk about navigation, I didn't talk about recreation, but it's kind of a wash. They all, even with the BB plan, they're all in the same ballpark area. But where you see these divergences are kind of what I just went over.
At the last meeting last week, the PDT, they did bring up the Lake Worth. They used that as kind of that outlet that's coming into Lake Worth Lagoon. They had that on their planning information too. And that was one of the first times I've seen it appear as far as consideration. So if Ronaldo Diaz, one of our Lake Worth waterkeeper, were here, you might say something. Questions for city? We'll start with Ed and then go back.
I got a couple questions and a comment. If you go down to the slide where it shows the two down from that. There you go, right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. When these models were run, does this consider the rainfall in the area south of the lake? Because this one, what we were always told, I've been covering this for 27 years, what I'm always told is that we can't put water there because everything's full of rainwater from August through November. The second thing is that these don't include any projects that create more ability to flow water. There's no more.
Yeah, so those are both good questions. I would say I'll answer the second one first. The Army Corps, I mean, you saw Tamiami Trail just got some of that project started working on. There's a lot of infrastructure projects that are also underway that are gonna help facilitate that water movement south. But that red line that we're looking at up there, that's the existing history. If you look at the beginning of the red line, it's the lowest of all of those future plans. That's November timeframe. So as you can see, they weren't proactively, this whole time, have not been proactively moving water early in the season. Because of that, and this goes to your first question, because they weren't moving water earlier in the season, once you start getting to May, right, and there's still so much water in there, and you haven't mitigated that issue whatsoever, new rainfall happens maybe every other year in May. And now you've just compounded the problem, and because of the fact that they need to send water south, not generally, but send water south under a certain pollution limit, I'll just put it like that, you can't just say, oh, because we have the physical capacity to move this water south, we can move it. The Army Corps is looking at water quality factors because of the consent decree. So that's the challenge. But my point about this slide is that if you look at these other plans we're supporting, they're just starting off in November, double the amount of movement of water. That's a huge difference than what we've done in the
I don't mean
past.
to be skeptical, but I think it's full of crap. I just don't see how you can't shove more water through that tiny straw in the Miami Canal that's in the south end of the lake.
Well, it's not a physical
And
constraint,
they had
right?
plenty of opportunity this dry season to put more water, and they kept telling us, well, we can't put water in STA 1, 2, because there's something wrong with it. And we can't move water into the water conservation area, whatever, because it's another problem. You know, you just get sick of the excuses. And my last comment, I'll shut up, is, you know, I'm a lifelong resident here. I raised another generation of my family in this town. And if I'm part of this community, I want AA or 0, one or the other. CC, that's no, we don't care about the Poosahatchee River, and we don't care about Lake Worth Lagoon. They need to go fight their battles. If they don't want us to show up to this fight, we've been fighting this for 90 years. 90 years we've been fighting this. And we keep going, well, you know, we need to, be sharing adversity. No, we don't. No one asked us to share adversity. They made this plan and killed us for 90 years. 90 years. We have damage done to this entire estuary that will never, ever be corrected, period. So.
Well, just to clarify, because this question did come up, I think Jim was kind of asking too, the city's position right now is obviously in motion, just like the county, because, these aren't final plans, but our position right now is to take the best elements of AA and CC, because they both have pros and cons to them. So that's
I'm not a politician, I'm just giving my opinion, that's all.
No, that's good points, thank
Okay,
you.
so I've been on the public meetings, but not the PDT, and I hear the water supply advocates, maybe public commenters, asking to delay the process. What are you hearing on the PDT side? Are they gonna keep moving towards, what is it, August?
Congress was pretty clear, it doesn't really matter what their opinions are.
Okay,
Congress
just
set those
hoping that that's-
timelines, yeah. I mean, we're just supportive of doing the process, which is what we're doing right now. And there's nothing we would like more information. That's certainly something that we've requested, and I know other agencies have requested, and that has to do with how the Army Corps arrives at the decisions or the modeling solutions that you see. But at the end of the day, there's a legal process that the Congress has stated, and the Corps is probably not going to deviate from that.
Is it August that we're gonna hear?
The end of July or August, I believe, is where their target to.
Yeah, I think October is where they're going to be starting to write, I think, part of the draft plan, but that's going to take at least 6 months. So you're not going to physically see a lot of the environmental impact information. All of that will come at early next year. So that's a time frame. But right now, the next month and a half for selecting these alternative plans, this is the critical moment. So if you're going to go to a South Florida Water Management District meeting or going to participate in the PDT meetings, now would be a good time. And the next one, I'm sure Mark was going to bring it up, but that's coming up on the 7th, the next PDT meeting.
Yeah, so their schedule is always posted on their presentations, and we can post this, but that's kind of working towards this mid-July through September. They're going to take the preferred alternatives, start doing evaluations, and then bring it forward into January next year. And then congressionally, they go through that process to adopt, the preferred plan, because by next year, 2022, is the time criteria set on the completion of the Purdue Valley construction. And so that's that 2022 deadline, that's why they're on this track. We have Blair and then Eve, and then we'll wrap this going, moving on to district. Blair?
Well, Ed, I just wanted to echo your comments in terms of how this organization should be treating this planning process. And again, I've had conversations with, the county and obviously with the city and with like Friends of the Everglades and other organizations that have more of a whole systems approach. But without a doubt, Rivers Coalition, and we've talked about this, should be 100% focused on stopping the discharges, saving the river. I mean, it's been on the bumper sticker for 20 years, and that's what we need to focus on. And again, it's really good to see the city involved like this. I've talked to, Ben about what was going on in 2007 and 2008 when the last plan was put together. When you didn't have this kind of involvement. You didn't see the kind of active sort of ping-ponging of plans. I don't think there was any of that. And so we are making a difference. And I think the more we stay hardline, zero discharges, the calculus changes. So I think, and Ed, to your point, we've got to continue to push for that 100% with no compromises. Other people obviously are going to fight their battles, and they have to figure out what is best for the whole system. Eve, as a board member of Rivers Coalition, is fighting for zero discharges here, but as executive director of Friends of the Everglades, has to look at things a little differently. Potentially the same with other advocacy groups, but we're not going to win unless we fight just as hard as we possibly can at zero discharges. And so, again, Ed, your other point in terms of what we're doing in reference to sending water south in the dry season, it doesn't happen because they're claiming that these STAs and WCAs come offline. They come offline because of what? They come offline because Sugar is mandating this, because they need the opportunity, potentially, to drain their fields. They have 400,000+ acres of sugar. If it rains a lot in May or June or July and they have to dump their fields, drain their fields, they need to have those SDAs. So the more we fight for not only lake levels, but access to the storage, the better chances are that we're going to get a plan that works for us. But it's not just lake levels, there's so many different things, and it's just great to see the city, the county, coming together and being vocal at these meetings. And again,